Excel 2007 What If Analysis. Chances are you're dealing with a lot of numbers in your Excel spreadsheet, and you're probably trying to predict what's going to happen in the future. So here are a number of different techniques that you can use to prepare for the future, or really compare certain variables in a formula, as well as just changing one specific value to see how you can get to that goal. If you're seeking a certain dollar amount to earn by the end of the year or something like that, you can use goal seeking. Scenarios let you model your data with different changes in cells to see how those outcomes will look. And then we're going to take a look at that autofill tool once more, because there might be more to it than you realized. You can actually autofill a series and have a mathematical calculation of your desire applied to the data as it's being autofilled across an array of cells. I have created a what-if analysis spreadsheet where we can do all of our various scenarios and all of our different analyses. The first thing we're going to do is figure out, hey, how much will my car payments be if I don't have a down payment? I have a 7% interest rate on my loan. My loan's for 48 months, and I'm borrowing $20,000. This is the layout for a one variable data table, because our goal is to create a formula, and then we're going to test it out with different interest rates. What about a 6% interest rate or a 5% interest rate, and so on down the line. So first we'll create the formula. I'm selecting the cell where I want my first monthly car payment informational piece to go. Now I grab the formula. It's on the formula ribbon under Financial, and this one is Payment. So I'll scroll down. It's PMT for Payment. Here's the wizard. First, what is the rate? Move that out of the way. Our interest rate is 7%. Notice here it tells you it's the interest rate per period for the loan. We want this loan over a monthly period, so I'll type in 12. We'll divide this by 12. Our end period, our net period, is the total number of payments for the loan. That information is here, 48 months. Notice we're using the same type of period measurement. This one is monthly, that's why we divide it by 12, and then we have 48 months. So you have to keep with the same unit of measurement here. Our PV, the present value, this is the total amount that a series of the future payments is worth now. We're going to borrow $20,000 now. This is all we have to fill in. So please note, you could put in the future value or the cash balance you want to attain after the last payment is made. Well, we want it to be 0, so we can just omit that. And type has to do with the payment, whether it's going to be at the beginning of the period or at the end of the period, or omitted. I'll choose OK. All right, so over 48 months at 7% interest, we'll be paying about $479 a month. All right, so we have the base formula. Now let's create a data table. We want to test it out with a 6% interest rate, and a 5% interest rate, and a 4% interest rate. This is going to be the interest rate that is adjusted. We're not changing the months, we're not changing the loan amount. We're only going to be tweaking the interest rate. So here's the first step. Select the range of cells that include the formula, include the data that we'll be adjusting, and also the cells where you want your new payments or your new information to go. So first you select the range, and then you grab the command for the data table. It's on the data ribbon under What If Analysis. Click this down arrow and I'll select Data Table. From here, I have two choices. I'm creating a one variable table. I'm only adjusting one variable in that formula, which is the rate. But I have to know, is this a row input cell or a column input cell? Well, I want Excel to read down the column, so it's a column input cell. What I need to select is the cell that's within this formula, because Excel has to know, well, which cell reference in this formula am I tweaking? It's this one, it's cell B4. Let's click OK. All right. I could select this, do one of these auto formats so they all look the same. But look at that, 6%, of course the payment's going to be less, 5%, 4% would be even better, $451.58. Looking good so far. Let's go ahead and click Save. This was a one variable data table. By the way, if I wanted to clear this information, if I select it and press Delete on my keyboard, I can certainly do that. Or I can always go here to the Clear information, and I can choose to clear the contents, clear the formats, or clear both the formats, the contents, and the comments as well. Now we can create a few data tables with more than one variable, two variable data tables. How many years until I've saved $1 million? I'm going to grab another formula. Back to my formulas toolbar into Financial. This time I want the NPER formula, the net period. Again, we're going to work with the rate. Our rate is 6% divided by 12, because we're talking about our rate per month. We're going to have 12 months in a year. Our payment, we think we'll be able to save $500 a month, so that payment is a negative $500 a month. Our present value, we don't have a present value. We do have a future value because we're striving to save $1 million. All right, we'll choose OK. 480 months. How many years is 480? So we need to divide that by 12. That's 40 years, 0.06. So it's going to take us about 40 years to save $1 million. Well, let's try that out with different interest rates. Maybe we'll have a 8% interest rate, or a 9% interest rate, or maybe even 11% interest rate here. And how about payments? Maybe we'll be able to sock away $1,000, or maybe we'll be able to sock away $1,500. So this, if I put it as the same format, it's a little easier to understand here. Okay. All right. Now, step number one in creating a two variable data table is to make sure that you have your formula in the right spot. Let's do a comparison. Here our formula is above and to the right. Here we had an empty column. This all has to do with where you're going to type your variables and where the end data is going to go. So one variable table, you start out with a blank column and you put in your variable data. In a two variable table, your formula goes directly up one row and to the right one row. Okay, step number one. Step number two, select the range where your information is going to appear. So we make sure we have our input data here and the area where we're going to see our various results. Now we grab the command. It's still in the data ribbon under What If Analysis, and it's called Data Table. Our row input cell. The row input cell is the data that's supplied in a row, but the input cell is the cell that's actually included in the formula. Our column input cell is the data that's displayed in columnar format, but we have to select the input, the cell that's actually in the formula. Let's go ahead and click OK. All right, so again, we're talking periods here by months. It used the same formula, so it's dividing it by 12. If we can sock away $1,000 a month at 8% interest, it'll take us 25 years. If we can sock away $1,500 a month at 11% interest, it's going to take us 18 years to save $1 million. Just for kicks, let's do one more two variable data table so you can see it again. This time we're thinking, well, how much will I save if I have 6% interest? I save over 60 months and I'm saving $500 a month. Again, we click where our formula goes, back to the formula ribbon under Financial. This time we're doing the future value of money. Same thing goes with the rate, divided by 12, enter. How many periods? Well, 60 months. What's our payment going to be? Negative $500. We'll choose OK. So with this information, we'll save $34,885 in 60 months. 5 years. It'll take us 5 years to save that much money. Well, let's trade some of these various variables. Let's tweak the rates again. Let's say we get a 0.04 or 4% savings. We have a 7% savings, and we have a 8% savings there. Instead of 60 months, let's see how much we can save in 3 years, 36 months, or we can save in 4 years, 48 months. We're doing a 2-variable table again, so the same thing goes. You select the range where your base data is and where your destination for your information goes. Data ribbon, what if analysis, data table. Our row input cells, which one is our row input cell? The information that goes across the rows, whatever ties with the same information that's across the rows. Our column input cell, again, whatever ties to what's going to be read in that column. And again, it has to be right underneath this formula and right next to this formula for your data table to work. Okay? We can make these have these dollar signs. We can decrease the decimal places. And here we go. Of course, we could redo this table if we didn't want to have months and we wanted to have different payment options. You have total flexibility. As long as it's a variable that exists within the formula, you can change it based on this data table. And by the way, we have this data table selected. Here's what the syntax looks like. This is how Excel reads it. Let's go ahead and do some goal seeking. Goal seeking is still found in your data ribbon under What If Analysis. The idea here is, though, we can change one cell. So we have our base data, we can tweak one cell. That's it. So I'll grab the tool in What If Analysis, Goal Seek. What cell do I want to set? Well, I want to see how much money I have to save to get to $1 million in 25 years. So I'm going to set cell B6 with the value 25 by changing my payment. I can only change one cell to get to this end result. Okay. All right. My target value is 25 years to save $1 million. I need to save $14.43 with 6% interest. Okay. So goal seek again is just one value. You select any area in a range, you grab the tool. You have to have two things in mind, really. What goal are you seeking? What's the address of the cell and what's the value of that goal? And which cell do you want to change to achieve that goal? Now let's take a look at some scenarios. The idea here is I've got some money to invest, and here's what I figured out as far as this data goes, and I'll come back to that. But I want to see some different variables. I want to see if I have different profits. How is that going to change my total profit and my net present value? So what does this data mean? Well, which project should I invest in? I've got $10,000. My interest rate's 4.75. Here, my total profit's $13,000, but just summing the profits doesn't take into consideration money over time. That's our net present value formula, which is shown right here, and that's another item you can grab out of the function wizard. It'll walk you through it. Again, the idea is, hey, $10,000 isn't worth the same today as it's worth 3 years from now. And so therefore, just looking at these profits isn't really how much money I'm going to reap back from investing $10,000 into this project. So my goal is to create a few scenarios. This here, what I'm looking at, is going to be my scenario to invest in a lemonade stand. But I have a couple other opportunities. Maybe I could take that $10,000 and invest in a hot dog stand and maybe in an ice cream stand. So I'm going to create these 3 different scenarios. And then right here in these cells, I'll be able to toggle back and forth and see how those different profits are going to affect my total profit and my net present value. The reason why you might want to do a scenario instead of laying out an entire table is so that you can just tweak these cells right here in place, and then when you come up with the scenario you want, it's already formatted. You can just click that print button or email it off to whoever wants to receive this information. Also, with our scenario command, we can throw this onto a totally new sheet, and it's nicely formatted and it looks pretty good. So, step number 1, we select the range that has all of our data in it. Step number 2, on the data ribbon, we grab, it's a manager because we can choose to add different scenarios. Our first scenario is going to be our lemonade stand. What cells do we want to change? Well, we only want to change our profits. In fact, you're not able to include a formula in the changing cells. Okay. I'm going to keep these values the same for our lemonade stand. That's our first scenario. Our second scenario is a hot dog stand. Whoops. Hot dog stand. We're going to change those same cells, make sure they're selected. Okay, B5 through V7. B7. We also could have removed the check mark, just make sure we're not going to make any changes to that or allow changes. Okay, now let's change them. We think with our hot dog stand, we're going to get $10,000 back the first year, $4,000 back the next year, and we think we'll get $3,000 back the following year. Let's add one more scenario. This one's going to be our ice cream stand. Same cells, B5 through B7. I'll choose OK. Now what do we think these values are going to be? Well, we think we're probably going to get only $5,000 back in year 1. We also think we'll get $5,000 back in year 2 and $5,000 back in year 3. Okay. Let's add one more in there. What else can we possibly sell? Well, how about cotton candy? Cotton candy. B5, B7, okay. This time, yeah, we think we'll get all our money back in the first year, $10,000. And then we think we'll get $10,000 in the following year. And you know what? We think we'll get about, well, $5,000 back in that year. So we'll choose OK. Now let's go ahead and take a look. This is our lemonade stand, our hot dog stand, $17,000 profit, but our net present value is only $55.39. Our ice cream stand, $15,000 profit, but our NPV is only $3,000, almost $4,000, but it's because we're only getting half of it back in year 1. It takes us to the third year before we start really making a profit. Cotton candy, here, $12,000. So what was lemonade? Cotton candy is almost $13,000. Lemonade is $11,000. Even though we get all of our money back plus $2,000 in year 1, our cotton candy, we end up having a better net present value because we have 2 pretty good years there. So our scenario manager really lets us take a look at all of the data in the same range of cells. A summary. Let's see what happens if we choose this information. Okay. Notice how it gives us a whole new sheet. Instead of on the Scenario tab, we're on the Scenario Summary tab. And it shows us our current values, our lemonade stand, our hot dog stand, our ice cream stand, and our cotton candy stand. And this is really just the information that was changed. And these are the results cells. So we can kind of look at the various profits side by side, and we can look at the various net present value. This tells us our cells, but we could always add information here. Total profit. And then we could do, year 1, year 2, year 3. And we could even tweak this up a little bit more if we wanted to hide this information. If we wanted to hide this information as well, we could just click on that and even hide that column. So this is a pretty nice looking report. It's not too bad. And it's been outlined for us automatically. Allows us to compare our scenarios side by side. We could send this right off to the printer. Let's go back to scenarios and take a look at Scenario Manager one more time. I can edit these items. I can delete them. I can even merge scenarios from this book with scenarios that I have in other locations. So I can create more than one scenario. I don't want to merge any scenarios. So scenario is just another way for you to evaluate various pieces of information. It's not much different than this data table, except for the format is different and the orientation really is a little bit different. And really your goal is different because with the scenarios, We want to be able to see it in a nicely formatted spreadsheet, columnar, so we can take a look at it that way. Let's do a pivot table now. What if scenario, scenario manager, summary. We can also have a scenario pivot table report. When I choose OK, here it is. Of course, I can change this to be year 1, year 2, year 3, total, and net present value. And I can choose what it is I'd like to see and what it is I would not like to see. We had a whole nugget on pivot tables, and it's pretty cool. It's just a different way to look at your information. Of course, I could format this so it's more understandable. I have the whole functionality of Excel here. It's just laying out my information in a different direction. The last thing is autofilling a series. We're doing another what-if scenario. Instead of doing a formula, we're simply going to autofill. I've got my East region down to my South region. Their first quarter totals, their second quarter totals, and I don't have the third and the fourth quarter yet. I just want to see what Excel's going to give me. I'll do an autofill. When you select more than one cell in a range and fill it over, Excel automatically calculates for you and assumes here, in this case, there was $9,000 difference between 1Q and 2Q. When we copied it over, we should just keep that $9,000 difference. Notice if I select $42,000 and $45,000 and copy it, it says, oh, hey, great, you're going to earn $3,000 in each one of these. So it just figures out that pattern for you. I want to autofill with a trend, so I select the cells that should be copied in the area that they should be copied to, and I grab the command off the home ribbon in the editing area. Right here is the autofill. What do I want to autofill? A series. Linear was what it was doing before. It just figured out, hey, negative $9,000. But maybe I'd like that step value to be different. I don't think it's going to be $9,000. I think actually we're going to go up $3,000, and I'd like to see that. So now it's even adjusted. I'm at $45,000 for Q2. Not looking in the history. Where do I think I'm going to go? I want a growth trend at 1.05. I'm bumping this up by a specific percentage. And there we go. I figured it out. So you just have to do a little bit of planning, a little bit of calculating. You can go into your series though, and you can choose a growth, which is a percent calculation generally, and a linear, which is just the same value added to each extra item that exists there. You can put a stop value if you want to, or you can let it just trend. The trend, notice, is the exact same thing as just copying it over. And of course, what we're doing here isn't by any means specific. These values may greatly change, but at least it gives you a little bit of data that you can use to plan for the future. And when it all comes down to it, do we ever know what the future holds for us? Hopefully these tools that we talked about in this nugget will really help you to predict the future, or at least see what some of your potential items are. We used our data tables, both a 1 variable and a 2 variable data table, to see what would happen if we had different interest rates or if we paid more each month. We got to see what would happen to our loans or how much more money we could save. Goal seeking allowed us to change a cell in order to reach one specific goal. Scenarios are a way to model data. You can build various scenarios into your spreadsheet, show them, toggle them, and compare them against each other. The autofill tool has more to it than simply copying information from one cell to another, and we took a look at how you could have linear or growth progressions in the data that you copy from one cell array to another. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.